Max Jones, road racing champion and current Ganassi NASCAR program manager?
Yeah, like
director?
Managing
Boss?
director.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I'm not a big deal, but
Max the Axe.
Max the Axe. I probably there's a lot of guys out there that would laugh at that one. Yeah, but
If you could describe this dinner with racers in one word, what would it be?
reflective.
Perfect.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
Welcome to Dinner with Racers. I'm Ryan Eversley alongside Sean Heckman.
That's me. I'm eating coffee cake.
Okay. And we are on season 2 of Dinner with Racers here. We are literally driving to the airport so I can get the hell away from this guy sitting next to me and recording these intros to the shows for you because you deserve it so much with all the money you're paying. Anyways, I'm better.
Luckily, the work is all worth it because of the royalties we're getting out of this.
So, along our 12,000-mile odyssey in our Honda Odyssey on...
Continental Tire.
There you go. You're good at it. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, specifically, Ross contact LX20.
Hey, nice plug.
Yeah.
So we ended up in the NASCAR kind of country of Mooresville, North Carolina, and one of the people I really wanted to talk to, I've got a lot of respect for this guy, is none other than Max Jones. Max himself was a race car driver in the beginning of his career, and now in the former part of his, I'd say, racing life, has become more of a management type. He is the current general manager of Chip Ganassi's NASCAR program, and formerly worked at Roush Racing in the same kind of position. So he's been there, he's done that, and he's seen it all. Now, what I had to explain to Sean ahead of time was that Max is a very intimidating persona when you first see him.
Literally has the nickname Max the Axe because he used to have the reputation of firing people left and right.
Yeah, if you weren't getting it done, you were out of there. And what really struck me with this interview is that when you first saw him, you actually said, oh, is it that guy? He does look intimidating. And then when he sat down with us, he kind of gave us a little smirk, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yep.
And then he couldn't have been more warm and friendly and open, and we got to hear a lot of the cool stories from back in the day as well as current day stuff.
And here's the thing about Max. He's not known for doing this kind of thing, and that's why it's kind of a coup that we got him.
Right.
In fact, everyone who knew who he was, when we mentioned we got Max Jones, all of them, including guys like Carl Larson, Ricky Stenhouse, Landon Castle, they all were like, oh, shit, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the things we talk about.
Yeah.
We revisit the character of Decal.
That's correct. Who saved his life.
Who saved his life.
Decal Kelly saved Max Jones's life.
We talk about his driving days with Roush.
Yep.
We talk about the idea of what a gong show was. We talk about the current situation in NASCAR, his current driver lineups. And we did this all while eating at, I believe the name is Toast.
Yeah, Toast in Davison,
North Carolina.
And I believe I had a bagel on lox, and
I had their breakfast chicken sandwich.
of course you did. All of this courtesy of Honda for letting us have this kick-ass Honda Odyssey, as well as
Continental Tire.
there you go.
Cross contact LX20.
All right, press play now.
All right.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome.
I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Oh, perfect.
We don't either.
Yeah, that'll.
We're in good company.
Well, that makes 4 of us.
Yeah.
Do you know this guy? Do you recognize?
I do know him.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
I know his dad really well too.
Oh, all right,
Okay.
even better. We don't have a cardboard cutout Bob yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we're-
next year.
We're working our way.
Yeah,
up.
we're trying to build up our budget.
We're just trying to tear the family down one person at a time.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I don't want a cardboard stand-up of myself. But
Noted.
Yep.
Neither did he.
yeah, I know. That's what I'm worried about here today. I have no idea what I'm doing. And you probably don't know me, but I don't do media.
Right.
You never see me interviewed.
Right.
I raced because I wanted to race, not because I wanted to be famous. So.
Well, we were like, when Sean and I talked about this originally, I was like, if we get Max Jones, like we've done something here because he doesn't do the media stuff, so that would be pretty cool. But let's talk about Max Jones, the race car driver, before anything, because I work for Petey Cunningham at Real Time Racing, and you used to race against Petey Cunningham in a series I vaguely remember as a child, but I didn't really remember that well.
A child, that makes me feel really good.
You were really young in the video. the SCCA truck racing, road racing series that you ran in back in like 87, 88-ish. I think you're the 87 champion?
Yes,
okay.
87.
And you're racing against the Archer brothers and Petey Cunningham and then a bunch of guys I never heard of who are also really good.
Like Pete Halsmer?
I know Pete Halsmer.
Yeah,
he's a longtime Honda guy. But like a guy like Bud Kading maybe?
Bud Kading. There's a guy named, there's a bunch of them. It was Ray Kong.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's think who, and Jeff Krosnoff got my ride after in '88. He drove that truck after I did.
Right.
Both California guys. There was that was an awesome deal, and I didn't really want to do it. The year before that, I'd won the IMSA Firehawk Championship with Tommy Kendall, and so Nissan had helped me, and I really wanted to be driving real race cars. That was my ultimate goal.
Not pickups. Sure.
Not pickups. And so I said I would do it for the first race or two. Well, then I think I won Sears Point, maybe. Right. No, I didn't win.
And these were like real pickups, right? These weren't like Craftsman truck kind of purpose-built things.
They were the mini trucks, Datsun, Jeep, Toyota, Chevy S10, Jeep. I mean, it was a really big field and really great racing. I look back on that, and it's some of the funnest racing I ever had.
No doubt.
If you go on YouTube and you look up SCCA race trucks, it comes up pretty quickly. It's like the second or third one. And there's a race from Road Atlanta that Bob Varsha, who we've had on, as well as Jack Baldwin, who loves to talk, they're the commentators. And you can tell Jack's watching the whole time, like, I want to be out there. Because he's like, he's like, oh, that was cool. That's like his commentary. The draft was like a big deal. Like you guys had to work together and everything.
Teammates were a big thing too.
Right. Yeah. And then this blows my mind. But this is like the race that you can find is like 1989. They actually invert the top six.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, okay, we're doing that. And so the guy that's on pole.
Wait, so does that mean you would like aim to qualify sixth?
Well, they wouldn't tell you, apparently.
They wouldn't tell you.
Oh, so it's just like a lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is crazy because now people be like, that's that's
fixed.
You can't.
Yeah,
exactly. But they would literally alternate,
So you qualify in the top six, and then you like sort of draw your position out of a hat kind of thing?
This race, it looks like they literally just inverted it.
I think they just picked a number that they're going to invert. Like
top 4, top 5.
6, top 8,
Yeah.
But if I remember right, there was 15 or 20 trucks out there.
Yes.
It was a big field.
Yeah.
It was
nice.
And it was fun. I mean, Road Atlanta, I remember Pete Halsmer, him and I raced side by side. Underneath the bridge, down the hill, and that was before they've changed it around. That was back when the dip.
Yeah.
You were in a little pickup truck. I mean, it was great racing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you get a chance, look it up because everyone's got open face helmets with microphones, and like sunglasses and everything. It's a killer video. We sat down with Calvin Fish earlier this year, or this season, I should say.
He drove.
And he drove back then. And you guys, did you win the 12 hours together?
No. I won with Robbie Gordon.
Yeah.
In 91.
Okay.
In the old Roush Mustang.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then Calvin and I drove together like at the 24-hour and different times. I think he might end up winning the 24-hour with Lynn. I was in the other car with Dorsey.
Yeah.
Finished second. Yeah. Seemed like at the 24-hour I always finished second until I started managing, and then we won every year. So I never won the 24 hours as driver.
Right.
Which is kind of a bummer for me, but that was a big goal.
And they used to not give out watches for every class. They only gave it for the overall winners, and now every class gets it. So everybody like Calvin that's won their class back in the day is like, they're a little bitter about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you still make your way out to sports car races?
I try. With what I'm doing now, it's like every weekend I'm racing, and so if I get one weekend off, it's pretty hard to justify going to another.
Going out there cause
I went to Petit Le Mans last year. I went to Coda.
Wait, Petit 2015?
Yes.
Oh, you chose the wrong one.
Yeah. No, because it rained.
It rained the whole time.
No, I
right?
went in 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a much better one.
Yeah, and I've gone to the Glen. I've gone to a few of them, but it's so hard. I was going to go to Le Mans, and then I bailed at the last minute this year.
Right.
I wish I would have, but I also I was so busy. I ended
Sure.
up getting sick around that time.
Sure.
And my mother passed away, so it would have been. I would have got over there, had to come back.
Yeah.
So it worked out for the best. Most things do.
Right.
But I might go over this year. That's one race I haven't gone to, and I would really
Be really
yeah,
cool to go
it'd
to,
be
sure.
really cool.
Because there's a very specific reason we ask is there's a paddock staple. If you want to, we can get into this already.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the paddock who's
Oh,
who's
that-
part of the
knows
IMSA scene,
He knows who he is.
and we're told that one Decal Kelly saved your life.
He did at Sebring. Jesus Christ! I caught fire. The only time I've ever been on fire. I have not seen him in years, but I always
Oh, you
go
can't miss
when
him.
I do see him, I thank him for saving my life.
All right, you can't leave it there.
When you're a little kid, they tell you if you ever catch fire, drop, roll.
Yeah,
or, you know,
right.
I took off running. Have you ever been on fire?
No.
It is hot. And
Okay, I think you skipped a couple steps in the story here. You don't just end up on fire at
Yeah.
Sebring. So how does this happen?
so at that time, let me think what year that was. I don't think I had started driving yet. I probably was driving like, regional club
Sure,
racing
sure,
and stuff, but I was
sure.
fueling Joe Vardy's Mazda RX-7 at the 12-hour.
Right.
I did, and early in my life, I did anything I could to be at the racetrack.
Same.
I
Yeah.
hung on the fence, and I worked for free. I mean, that's how I got my career started.
Same.
Sure.
So to go to Sebring, it was awesome. I don't care what I had to do. So I was fueling. Well, we didn't get close enough to the pit wall, so I'm stretching the fuel hose.
sure.
Okay,
Okay.
It should have been 2 feet over.
Yeah.
I'm stretching. It's leaking fuel. And if you ever remember the Mazdas, the muffler glowed red,
Yes.
and it shot a flame out the back about
Right.
a foot.
Right.
And that was between my legs. Well, the fuel was dripping down. Boom.
Right.
I go up. I drop, obviously, and I mean,
But you were at least like full suit and all that at the time.
yeah,
Okay.
that was funny because I'd fueled it 3 or 4 times earlier, and it was hot,
Yeah.
like it's just Sebring. I saw him coming down around the last corner, coming to pit lane, and all I had was a balaclava on, goggles, tin of shoes, an old fire suit. I don't even know if it was mine. It might have
Right.
been, yeah. And so I pulled the balaclava, pulled the goggles up, put the balaclava over my nose, put the goggles on it. That's before I'd had my nose hanging out.
Right.
So fuel it, burn, the whole deal. My shoelaces were melted together. My goggles were melted. Wow. I mean, I had like a pretty good sized blister on my arm
Yeah, sure.
from fuel. It probably soaked into the suit
Right,
and burned, But yeah, I took off.
So he took you down.
He tackled me, and they put me out. There's never a fireman when you need one.
Right.
But, they're in the
there's
way.
Decal.
They're in the way all the time. But no, they're. It was like, wow.
Was it
Yeah,
Dan?
that was a long time ago.
Was it Dan Binks that
Dan
told us
Binks
that
told us
story?
that.
Yeah, Danny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad's been around the sport for a long time, and he was the first one that told me about Decal, and then I ended up working with him years later. He's a fuel guy or whatever, and I had my dad. We interviewed him as well, and I had my dad explain the legend of Decal because he had been around for so long, and he would like hitchhike
Yep.
from track to track and the whole thing. And so we brought it up with Dan because Dan's been around to see what he'd
Yeah.
say, and he was like, "Yeah." And then out of nowhere, he's like, "He saved Max Jones's life," and we're like, "We have Max Jones." He's like, "You got to ask him." So confirmed.
That's an awesome story.
Confirmed.
I'd forgotten about that. That is cool.
Yeah. That time I caught on fire. That's cool.
Yeah.
Talk about cool guys. Danny Binks.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Way-
were
yeah.
really happy we got him.
Yeah.
You guys all kind of come from that same background of like the Roush days. Tommy Kendall, we sat down with him last year, had a great 2-hour, episode of him. Talk about the early days of Roush with Tommy Kendall coming up and like he's the next big thing. Everybody's excited, and then he goes on to be successful.
Well, it even starts before then. Before I had gone to Roush, there was a guy named Paul Capina, he's a sprint car racer. We all hung out. I had a shop in Long Beach, Datsun Alley. It was an independent Datsun repair shop, later on to become Nissan. We had that for like 23 years. And so we all hung out there, raced, and Paul was running Vardy's RX-7 back then, and he introduced me to Chuck Kendall, Tommy's dad, and that's how we kind of got to know. I went to Miami, watched Tommy run an RX-7 there, and I had done, I was doing the Playboy Series, SCCA Endurance Series. Nissan was helping me with some cars through my shop, and And so we had run a few Firehawk races that year and won a couple. This is 85, 84, 85. And they were all endurance races. I could get some guys to, pay.
Yeah,
That's
right,
how
right.
I was doing it on my own nickel.
Right.
And borrowing some nickels too. And so I met Tommy, and he was 18, 19 years old, and going to UCLA. And so he started driving with me, and him and I hit it off really well.
Right.
And so then we decided in '86 to do the Firehawk Series and try to go win the championship. We did that. And then '87 he drove for Clayton Cunningham.
Right.
I drove for George Alderman. I was still living in California, but George out of Delaware, great guy. And I just, at the end of that '86 season, I had huge debt. We'd won the drivers' championship, Tommy and I together, and manufacturers' championship, and I got a wife and 2 kids, and I'm like a business that I'm collecting. So I'm like, I'm not driving a race car anymore. I've done it.
Yeah.
Lifelong dream. I did everything. I got to get
Now you
serious
got
with
to be an
life.
adult, sure.
And so I said I won't drive a race car without getting paid.
Yeah.
Number one greatest decision I ever made,
Yeah.
because we've all watched racers emotionally get involved in racing. They let their emotions take over. And
Right.
it's a tough sport. It really
Yeah.
is. And so
But I guess sort of the advantage of not having a choice, like you had to do this.
yeah,
'cause-
I mean, I could have, and I probably would have lost my business and my family and
Right.
all that. That's a bad choice, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
I did that, and I started tire testing a lot for Goodyear and for BFG and Bridgestone. Bridgestone really helped me a lot, in the early years. And so I was doing that, and then in '88, it came along the Beretta program with Chevrolet.
Right.
And I had won, 86, I won a championship. 87, I won the truck championship. So, I looked like the up-and-comer. I don't know if I was, but I looked like it on paper maybe. And I drove a lot of races in 87. I think I did 30, 40 races that year. And that was the year I said I wasn't going to race unless I got paid. So I did really well. I paid the debt off. I was winning, and George really showcased me in the GTU series in a Nissan that hadn't done that well, and we ran really well. We didn't win any races, but we ran really well.
Right.
And then at the banquet that year after St. Pete, Jack Roush came up to me after the banquet. He said, "You ever consider driving for me?" I said, "Heck yeah, I've been chasing your cars all my life."
Right.
So they had this, what they called a gong show back then.
Right.
Went to Sebring, and I just had a blast driving those cars. I mean, I did not go down there expecting to get the ride. There was 12 or 15 guys, and I just I was just going to drive the out of those cars. I didn't care.
We talked a little bit about this with Dan and with Calvin, but like the Gong Show, because there really isn't something quite like this now.
No.
So what was? Tell me about the Gong Show.
Well, it was. I think.
Do you want cream? We had to move everything off the table. Do you want cream or
no?
sugar?
I'm fine.
You're straight black kind of guy.
Straight black.
I love it.
The Gong Show, way cool. I can't even remember. I think there was 12 guys. It was Calvin, Robbie Buell,
some guy named Robbie Gordon.
Robbie Gordon was there.
Some kid,
and this was like an annual thing that he did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so it was like the top 10 young guys that were around.
And we drove the Trans Am cars for a day or a day and a half. I don't remember right now.
Right.
And then they took a select few that got to drive the turbo IMSA cars,
Cool.
4-cylinder, 1,000 horsepower. I mean, they were unbelievable. At that time, they were Cougars.
Yeah.
And, in the last day, they picked a handful of guys to drive those cars. So I think that was like, okay, let's see if these guys could do that.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. I'm in my hotel that night, and Willie T. Ribbs calls me. And he says, "Hey, Jones, I hear you're getting the ride." I'm like, "Willie, you're in California. I'm in Sebring, Florida. How in the hell do you know anything?" It's like, "Telling you, Jones, just trust me, man." So, I'm like, God, I go to sleep, and I really, and this is honest to God truth, I never really thought I would get the ride. I just was driving and having fun. I think that's something that everybody ought to think about. Just relax and have fun,
Yeah.
That's what we're all doing here.
Right.
It's a game. It's fun.
And there's so many factors you can't determine.
Yeah, I mean, and I had ups and downs, and you guys know that, ups and downs in motorsports. So I just had fun. And so the thing was all over. They thanked us all. I was ordered by my car, changed in out of my suit, in my street clothes. I was headed to the airport, and they came over and said, "Hey, would you come to Detroit next week?" And I said, "Yep."
I'll try.
Yeah,
I'm thinking maybe
Let me
Willie's
think about
right.
this. Yeah.
So, and I mean, it all happened that fast. We were like November. You know, I came back to Detroit, met Michael Kranifus. You know, it was just like, it just boom, boom, boom. You know, and next thing I know, I'm at Roush's shop and I'm, you know, doing the deal. So it was a great time. Jack Roush is probably next to my father, one of the guys that's helped me the most. You know, I spent 20 years with them, driving and managing, and won, I don't know how, I don't even keep track of how many championships. We won a bunch with Tommy, IMSA, and Trans Am. We won truck championship and a Bush championship. You know, I was around with the Cup championship. It was just like, you know, we had so much fun together. We're still really, really close, good friends.
So if I recall, you were like 38 when you decided to stop driving and switch to the management side.
Yeah,
That's-
that was a decision that was kind of made for me.
Copy. Yeah, okay.
You never make that decision yourself.
You're right.
Well, it was, we lost a sponsor. I'd gone to Daytona, finished second, went to Sebring, won with Robbie Gordon. So my actual last race was the 12 Hours of Sebring that I won. So if you're gonna,
That's a good way to end it.
if you're gonna end it, you win a race, and a great race. Yeah, I mean, we lost a sponsor. Jack promised me, hey, you know, if you'll come help me manage this small program, I'll get you back in the car, you know. And I think he still owes me that. I reminded him of that.
Call him
all
up,
the
yeah.
time,
Yeah, exactly.
you know. But there was a guy named Michael Dingman that was, he was on the board at Ford Motor Company, was 60 years old, and he wanted to learn how to race.
Okay.
And so I helped him, helped kind of run his team and coached him along for a while, and we became close friends. You know, he's 87 now, so we've had an 18-year, you know, relationship. I still see him. I was just in New York a few weeks ago for his wife's birthday, and
Okay.
he's just a great guy. He's helped me a tremendous amount, and I probably learned so much about business and people and managing. It was he ran a lot of big companies, and he just taught me a tremendous amount, and so I'm really grateful to him. I mean, I look back at my career and all the people that have helped me, you know, along the way, and him and Jack are you know, and Chuck Kendall, and there was guys that in that through your whole career you can look back on that helped you. And,
Right.
Yeah.
and then we just started the program there, and then and that was 92, 93, 94. Ford came back, and we were going to do the. Well, in '93 we did the IMSA program with Tommy and won the championship
Right.
with that flag car.
Yeah.
You know, we only won Daytona, but we won. You know, we finished well enough with all the races, and that was I look back on that. That was probably more rewarding to me than the Trans Am championships that we won, because, you know, it was like IMSA. It was against the Nissans.
Right.
which
Yeah,
were
it was just
pumping
the
a bunch
scope of that program, yeah.
And Gentilossi had 3 Oldsmobiles.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a tough deal, and we raced, and Tommy raced his ass off, and Danny ran that whole program. It's kind of my first into trying to manage a bunch of guys and figure out how to do it and run a budget. And so when we decided, you know, Jack said, let's go Ford Racing, I said, we got to get Tommy Kendall.
Yeah.
And need to get Danny Binks. And a lot of people in the organization, and I think outside, thought I was hiring my friends.
Sure.
Which
Right.
I were. There are my friends. But I knew those guys dug hard. I knew what they were racers.
Yeah.
And we put that program together, and we went off and won 4 championships
Yeah,
together
right.
in
Well,
5 years. you know.
Dominant.
I've never understood the whole, oh, he's just bringing his friends in kind of logic, because to me, I would expect that. And, like, you're going to bring the guys that you know
You
can
wanna work
win
with
and
people
that
you
are
like.
good and that click.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a chemistry that's necessary.
It's all about people.
Right.
This whole sport, you know, it's fast cars, and you got to have horsepower, and you got to have downforce, and, you know, you got to have great tires and all that.
Right.
But it's still, at the end of the day, I'm racing you. You got
Right.
the same thing as me.
Right.
If you don't have the same thing, we're open. It's an open series.
Right.
We need to get the smartest people around you to
Yeah.
figure out better mousetrap than they
Yeah,
got. So
exactly.
it's always about the people.
Yeah.
You know. And
I was going to say, with like your current situation, you run a Sprint Cup team that has 2 cars,
Yes.
and you're up against organizations that have 4 cars and satellite teams and things like that. And you guys are in a partnership with Hendrick or some.
the only thing we get are engines
Yeah.
and transmissions and gears
Right.
from them. That's it.
So if you didn't have those your 2 cars working together, it'd be way harder uphill
harder.
battle to go against a team with 4 cars that is working together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You're just gathering more data and more information,
Right.
and drivers are talking, and there's some economies of scale, obviously, too.
Sure.
But it's I think we're a 2-car team. We're pretty nimble compared to a 4-car team.
Yeah,
where we can react to things and do things. But yeah, we have to work together. There's no doubt. The drivers have, and both of our drivers get along really well, and the crew chiefs do too. And it's really working pretty well. It's been a great year.
So you're kind of that classic story that does not exist anymore, or not as much. Like, so you started in Southern California. Where at, by the way?
In Long Beach.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And during the good times of Long Beach.
Yes, I went to the Formula 5000 race there.
Yeah.
All the Formula 1 races.
Have you been to that area today? Because it's a pretty different area.
I went. Yes. Let me think here. 2 years ago, I went to the Long Beach Grand Prix with Chip, and
you hadn't been there.
I hadn't been there in quite a while.
Yeah.
But I grew
Weird
up
the movie
there.
theaters show real movies now.
Yes. Yeah. I remember when that Ocean. It was bad. My Datsun Alley was just 17 blocks up from the racetrack.
Right.
Not a great neighborhood.
Right.
But when I first started the business, it was the price was right on buying the building, so it worked out to be a great investment over the years in Southern California.
But you didn't have the means, right? You started your own shop, I assume, to pay for your way to go racing.
That's a whole story if you want to get into that.
Of course, yes, we do.
Absolutely.
So when I was in high school, when I was, I don't know, I always think about this, but when I was probably 5 years old, I wanted to be a race car driver. That's all. My parents bought me a tricycle when I was like really young, and I took it apart instead of rode it. Right? That's just me. And then
was there any family influence in motorsports?
Nope. They still think I should probably get a real job. So
when are you gonna go back to law school, Max?
That's another thing. I didn't make it through school very well, and but in school there was a thing called the Plymouth Troubleshooting Contest. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it.
Not a clue.
It was sponsored by Chrysler, and they would bug these cars. They would take a light bulb out, take a float out of the carburetor. You guys know what a carburetor is?
Yes, sir.
And maybe the points weren't working. I know you don't know what points are, but they would bug the car, and there would be 13 or 14 bugs in the car. And the team, it was a two-man team, high school team, the team that could fix the car the fastest correctly would win.
So they're deliberately screwing these things up. Now go fix it.
A guy's got a box with parts in it. Now you could go up there and ask him for a float. He might give you a bad float.
No.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
You really had to, and we practiced this and studied it, and there was a written test too.
Sounds like they were just a bunch of assholes, really.
It was a cool deal, and I've always wanted to do something like it, and I think Ford's got something going kind of similar now, but. So I won the state of California, and you go to the Nationals.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up winning the Nationals.
No kidding. Like your team?
Yes.
Okay.
It was actually my cousin. Him and I were just total car nuts. We lived in the same neighborhood. We went to the same, and it was sponsored by the auto shop class. And that's the only class I got A's in.
Sure.
Right.
And so I did that, and I got more press from that event at 18 years old than I did ever winning any races or anything.
Really?
It was a big deal. And I got a letter from Datsun at the time saying, "Would you like to come to work here?"
That's so cool.
Jeez.
Wow.
And it was,
I guess if you're a national champion at repairing a car,
Right,
at
but
18
that's
years
not a
old.
thing now.
No,
you
I
know
know.
what I mean?
And it's
That's
kind of
so
time
we
cool.
went to Washington, D.C. We were supposed to meet Nixon. He didn't show, obviously. But,
Right.
we had lunch with Secretary of Labor, and it was a big deal for a young kid,
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I had to buy a sports coat and a tie,
Yeah.
In Southern California, that didn't exist for me. And so I went to work at Datsun at the time, and it was a small company. I mean, Mr. Kadiyama had come over here and was selling, 510s and Datsun trucks, and they had the 240Z, and I worked and there was 400 employees in the whole company.
And your parents were giving you that you didn't have a real job? Because, to me, it's like if you win a national championship and Datsun comes calling at 18, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're going to make it.
So the scholarship, they gave me a bond. Plymouth did, I bought a house with that.
I don't think people know what bonds are anymore.
Yeah, no.
Those don't exist.
Yeah. So I cashed that in, bought a house
Okay.
in Southern California, which was a good investment. And at 18, and went to work at Datsun, and I just worked my way up there. And I worked there about 6 years, and I ended up doing a lot of different jobs. I was in the emissions lab. I went to Japan for a month and was studying fuel injection, and catalytic converters were coming out then. And I realized, and I started troubleshooting. They would send me the 240Zs with the SU carburetors. Nobody knew how to work on those, and it was all foreign cars. And so I started traveling around like a troubleshooter, a dealership in Denver that couldn't fix a car, and I did that. And I recognized the fact that the dealers weren't taking care of servicing people. So that's how I started Datsun Alley. I left. Everybody thought I was crazy then. I had a really good job, getting paid well. I had a company car. I was like,
How old are you?
good
at this
deal.
point? You got to be pretty young still.
I was 24.
Yeah, you're
Jeez.
24 getting flown around the country to fix cars for
Yeah.
people because
Yeah.
you're the only one that's out
Yeah,
there.
I was
really
all right.
cool.
Yeah.
I don't pat myself on the back very often, but I was a damn good mechanic back then.
Yeah.
Like Danny is
You
today,
probably just
or-
got so invested in it that
Yes.
you could not think about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew I could.
Was it that old tale of you could listen to an engine and like,
Yes.
okay, no, I know which
He's the
cylinder it
Datsun
is.
whisperer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
So I started Datsun Alley, and it was
Yeah.
just a small repair shop, and it really turned into a great business, you
Yeah.
know. And my brother ended up coming in and working with me on running it, and that's how I got started in racing. Really,
Yeah.
When I was with Datsun, they had a little competition department with Tom O'Connor and Frank Hansowitz. Do you know?
Yes,
Frank?
I know
Yeah.
Frank Hansowitz.
Great
Yeah.
guy. He helped me a tremendous amount. I was hanging around those guys and dynoing engines at night, and then going out to Riverside and Willow Springs, and then John Morton was driving
Yeah.
the Trans Am BRE, and Brad Fazell was at a shop in El Segundo building the 280Z,
Right.
and Electromotive was there. So I just hung around all that stuff, and
Right.
and I got hanging out at the racetrack. There was a guy that had a 510. I was helping him work on it. He asked me. It was like a test day out at Riverside, solo one where you were out the track or stuff. So
Yeah.
I put his helmet on, his suit, his shoes, his gloves, went
Right.
out there, and I went faster than he had been going. And
Right.
he'd been driving for a bunch of years, club racing. So he said, maybe we're doing this wrong. Maybe you should drive. I should work on the car. So that's how it all just started. And then Frank got me a showroom stock car, and just kind of started. That's how we all started racing out in Southern California. So like Frank and it was a great time. I was so lucky. Timing,
Right.
being in the right place
Location,
at the right
yeah.
time, But the troubleshooting contest, it was that jump start that was my law school, or that was my getting my master's, or
Right.
that was doing that jump started me for a career, and then the mechanicking and the automotive turned into
Right.
racing, and I think the racing was always in the back of my mind the whole
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. And obviously kind of clearly steered kind of the ship as you went, but the struggles of actually running the business, how did that kind of shape you to where you're at now?
Well, I think I think if you had to say, I think I'm a racer, but I think I'm a pretty good businessman. I mean, I've managed teams now for 25 years,
Yeah.
and my own teams, and recognize the fact when you can make it and you can't make it.
Right.
I mean, today I'm managing a pretty large organization.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. because-
But, and
heard
so
of it. We've heard
I
of it.
think, but I've had people teach me. Jack taught me a lot. Chip's taught me a lot. I mean, it's been a great career. I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I don't have any regrets, or
Sure.
I've been really, really fortunate.
It's kind of a common theme we hear with a lot of guys kind of that have made it, for lack of a better expression, is they try to live without regrets even through the failures.
Oh yeah,
through
I mean,
through
yeah,
some of the
you
struggles.
have the ups and downs, and,
Right.
and some days you want to know what the heck am I doing. But I also look back, and I don't know that I would have been able to go through a 40-year career
Yeah.
in a cubicle somewhere either.
Yeah,
It was. It's what I've always wanted to do.
Right.
Part of it, me now at my age, I don't seem like I'm racing. I'm more of a running a
Right,
business
right,
and organization.
right.
I don't drive. I don't
Yeah.
do the pit stops. I don't
Yeah.
call the race. I mean, I'm not doing much, but from a racing
you
aspect.
kind of made all the hires for the people that are doing that. So I would say you have a
Well,
pretty
that
big
that
role.
goes back to getting all the right people together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
identifying those people, and those people have to have like-minded
Yeah.
goals, and
Yeah.
Right. Right.
and egos.
Yeah.
You gotta manage those in
gotta
more
work together.
sports.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of parallels with baseball or football. When
Sure.
it comes to sports,
Sure.
managing a team and a group of guys.
And all the dynamics of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's tough.
So who in the paddock would you punch in the face?
Oh God.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
From
I
the
don't
media
know.
side, it would be.
Yeah.
Well, I
think of a
can name
couple
one
of
guy
them.
now.
But, yeah, I've tried to get along with everybody. I mean, there's in my early days of going from race car driver to a manager, I think
Yeah.
it was pretty hard on
I
people.
would say that had to be a rough couple of years
Yeah,
of just
it
sort of
was
seeing
like-
it.
I push people probably beyond what they should have been pushed sometimes. And
Right.
You know you have a nickname, right?
I have a couple.
Oh, okay. What are the nicknames that you know of?
Well, you give me the one that you know.
Max the Axe.
Max the Axe. That is probably the
Yeah.
most famous one, and that
Yeah.
was those early years where I was really hard on people.
So that comes from Roush.
Yeah, probably Roush. I mean, when you have a big organization and you have a lot of people, you're trying to make guys fit,
Right.
and everything. And if some guy is a black sheep in the herd and it's causing a lot of commotion, you
Right.
probably need to either remove him or put him in a different role and things.
Well, I don't think people understand that if it's especially like in a sports car program, if it's a group of guys, it's 12 guys, 10 guys, they're traveling everywhere. Somebody can be a good mechanic, but if they're a toxic person, it only
Yes.
takes one guy and it screws up the whole
Yeah.
deal.
Try 38 weekends.
Yeah.
Every 3 days you get on an airplane and go to another racetrack
Yeah.
and you're rooming together, you're working
Yeah,
together.
exactly.
Then you come back and you're in the shop working together. I mean, you see more of your guys than you do, your family. So it's you've got to get people that are, what I call racers, or passionate, like-minded, want to go win. Work together and get along. I think the mellower Max is trying to take that guy aside and trying to make it fit. Before I didn't have the patience, excuse me, and it was like remove and replace, and find. Now I'm trying to make it work, and move people around.
So now it's Max the relaxed.
Yeah, I don't know.
Relaxed Max.
Mellowed
Yeah.
Max. Part of it is it's a realization that I can't run as hard. I don't have as much gear as I used to have, and I just can't run that hard. So I'm trying to raise other people that can do
Right.
what I used to do, and it's frustrating to me because I look at some of these great kids that are on the team. I call them kids; they're 30-year-old, but they're just like awesome. The young Danny Binks is,
Right,
I mean,
right.
God, they're just unbelievable. I got 4 or 5 of them on the race team right now. They're just like going to be champions in their business, in their craft, and I just can't. It frustrates me. I see them. I used to be that way. I just can't run that hard. I've learned I've had to pace myself. Last year I run myself down really bad, got sick, got pneumonia. I was on my back for a month. I mean, it's taken me I'm still not 100%. I'm not, a year ago I was hiking in the back in Yosemite with, 40-pound pack. I mean, I'm lucky I can get up and down the stairs right now. So it's going to take a while to get back, but, that's just old age.
And I think that's part of the challenge, is forcing yourself to say, like, okay, I got to cut off.
Yes.
I don't care what's got to get done.
And it's hard because this thing is, right now,
Yeah.
is 38 weekends you're going.
Yeah.
You're going.
And the rate of development is insane.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Is there like a don't look Max Jones in the eye? Like make sure he's got his coffee right at 7:01 or
Don't touch his shoulder.
right.
No,
right.
I don't know that I got any of those. I mean, you'd have to ask everybody else. But it's weird because I'm Max the Axe. That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
But I think that most people, guys, I mean, I've fired guys and I've hired them back. And
Yeah.
I think there's guys out there that I've fired and a couple of them told me, you were hard on me, but you were fair, and I always knew where I stood with you. And I guess
Yeah.
I just try to be fair with everybody. It's not. It has nothing to do whether I like you or not.
Right.
We're here to do a job.
Gotta get a job done.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not want to go out and have a beer with you, but man, if you can dig hard, that's what we're gonna do. And
Right.
And so, I mean, some of the guys that I've had to let go over the years, I mean, they've advanced up and they're car chiefs and crew chiefs and and stuff, and we're still good friends. I mean, friends. I mean, we say hi to each other and cordial, but I think that's just a sport. I would look at it like baseball. If you had a team and you get a better shortstop than the shortstop you got, and you've been trying to help your shortstop, but he's not hitting the ball, and you got to make
you
a
gotta let it go.
replacement. You
Yeah.
got to, because you're letting the other guys on the team that are digging
Yeah.
down if you don't.
Who's in the NASCAR paddock now that was part of your deal that isn't, that you kind of look at him and go, damn, I wish I knew? A crew chief or a car chief.
There's a lot of kids. I mean,
Yeah.
because I've been in big organizations. I mean, we at one time when I was at Roush, we had 14 teams. So
Yeah, right.
there was a lot of guys. There's not very many people in the paddock that you haven't been associated with, or at one time or another. If you've been in But I mean, there's a lot of guys that have gone on, you know, and it's not that they were bad guys on our deal or anything. It just didn't fit in that,
right.
you know, and they might not fit now, or they might, you know, and it's just trying to get all that right, you know.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at the year 93, 94, 5, 6, 7 with Tommy and that we had everybody. It just gelled, you know.
Right.
And then the majority of those guys went over to Pratt & Miller, and they're over there. Most of them are still there now.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, look what they've done there with Feehan and those Corvettes.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
Doug Louse was on that team with us. And,
Right.
I mean, it's a great bunch of guys, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. This is stuff you can find on the internet, but let's go through some facts and figures of just NASCAR versus kind of the road racing world that we're primarily in, and presumably a lot of our audience is in. So, you know, the sports car programs we work with, your one car team is usually between 12 to 16 people. You know, maybe double that if it's a 2-car team.
Yeah.
A little different scope from, say, the Chip Ganassi, Felix Sabatis NASCAR organization.
Yeah.
So, how many employees?
In the building here in Concord, there's 250.
For a 2-car team.
Well, it's 250 for 2 Cup teams. We have 2 Xfinity teams, and we have 2 Rallycross.
Oh, so
teams
that's also
that
the Rallycross program. That's awesome.
Rallycross programs in
Okay.
our. It's actually in the building next door.
Now, do you guys build up those Rallycross cars, or are those fairly?
We bought those from M Sport over in Europe. And
Okay.
then just ran them.
And you just kind of run them
yeah.
as is. But outside of the engines and transmissions, the stock cars you're running are built within that organization.
Everything's built in-house. Chassis, bodies. We have a machine shop, machine everything, assemble everything.
So when we're talking a 250-person staff, it's not mechanics, it's designers, it's fabricators, it's guys putting out body work.
Yeah, body work. There's, you know, and we have the business side of the for all of the Ganassi organizations in Concord too. So we've got PR, marketing, sales. You know, you got travel personnel and HR and IT and those. But it's you know, to give you a rough idea, like on the weekends, 2-car team going to Cup race, we fly 50 guys.
Yeah.
And then there's another 14 or so that come on Sunday only that pit stops.
Just over the wall guys, right?
You know, and sponsorship service and things like that. So
Sure.
there's like 65, 64 people that come each weekend for a two Cup team.
It's incredible if you think about a top flight like Magnus Racing, who Sean works with. They're a really good GTD team.
Yep.
That you guys have like 14 people.
Yeah, if you
And
exclude me, it's about 14.
Yeah, 14
so.
people for a 1-car. So, you know, 28 if you had 2. That's still way less. And you wouldn't have 28 for a 2-car.
No,
GTD
there'd be
team.
some
They'd
mix and
pooling.
match. Yeah, absolutely.
But
So
part of that
pretty
is
interesting.
with the NASCAR program, the 38 weekends, you know, getting cars ready and everything.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you've got a dozen cars or whatever
Right.
it is. And so I assume a big part of the logistical side of it is here's the car that's racing today, but that car's not going to the next
Right.
track. You're getting that car set up to go the
And
day before.
with the schedule, you got the mechanics that are working on the car all weekend,
Right.
and then you got guys pitting. With road racing, the guys that are mechanic in the car, they're going to jump over the wall and change the tire too. So
exactly.
you know, it's just, you know, the engineer that's engineering it all week is also the engineer on the box
Yes, correct.
calling the race.
Correct.
You know? So
exactly.
that's the road racing thing to me is like the coolest deal going.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when I was in it in the Camel days and everything, it was just like really cool. 935s, 962s, you know,
absolutely.
marches. I mean, you know, Jack's cars and, you know, the Camaros and the Berettas. It was just awesome, you know. And it kind of felt like it went away a little bit. And now it's back. And I look at it with globally, worldwide, it's really cool.
Yeah.
There's a ton of manufacturers in it. The races are really exciting and short enough that, you know, keep the fan attention. I think some of the cars look like people's that would drive on the
Yes.
street.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That's the appeal.
I just think I tell people if I was 20 or 30 years younger, I'd be over road racing.
Yeah.
I really do.
Nice.
And it's 15 weekends or
Yeah, exactly. It's not 38.
you know, you might be able to have see your family once in a while.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Cup
exactly.
schedule is really, it's brutal. One of the things that piqued my interest about stock car racing, like, you guys don't take your pit box back. It goes to the end of pit road, They load them all into a generic shipping company trailer,
Yep.
and it goes to the next event or to storage or whatever. All your wheels go back,
Yep.
and they get stored and everything because it is like a traveling circus.
Yes, it is.
We talked to Landon last night, and I had him point out that you guys charter planes,
Yeah.
so all the teams fly together. You don't go to the airport. You don't go to Charlotte, get on a United or Delta flight or whatever. It's that big of a sport that it requires those logistics
Your own
built
planes.
internally.
Yes.
That is so cool to me because one of my big pushes and with this podcast is I want the road racing fans, despite Landon's best efforts, who referred to us as sporty cars. and he also was like, you guys have all the money, which we couldn't have laughed harder at.
Yeah.
Is that for, quote, rednecks, it's
Yeah.
very technologically advanced and
Yes.
very, very
Well, you're the only ones making your own cars.
you guys are literally manufacturing facilities,
Yes.
as Landon and Justin pointed out.
Yeah.
Which in F1 they call you a works team. You know
Yes.
what I mean. They say you're the factory, Williams factory. They're building cars. Well, it's the same thing here in Mooresville for a lot of these teams.
For me, my career, I started out road racing and kind of was on a works team, if you want to call the Chevy thing,
Yeah.
with the Berettas and Cars and Concepts and with Jack's Ford program. And then, I went IndyCar racing where you get a car in a box and you race it. And then I came back to this and, it's like I've kind of done all those. And I think when I left NASCAR and went IndyCar racing, engineering and data and things like that was just coming into the sport. And now, it's everything, and I think me going off and learning, we had data and we had that kind of technology in sports cars back then, and then to go off and do it in Indy cars and then come back, I think I probably, it's like if you always work at one place.
Yeah, you're never going to get the outside influence.
I went off and did the IndyCar thing for a few years, and I learned a lot those 2.5 years I was over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do a pass-along question on the show.
Yep.
So Landon's pass-along question for you was, how long are you going to do this for?
That is a big question,
Yeah.
and everybody's asking me that, and I think I've kind of come to the determination that that's something that I have to, decide myself, and I'm really, really fortunate. I have a great wife that I've been married to for 43 years, and she's put up with this nonsense, and she's supported me.
Is she a fan of the sport?
Yeah, she does. She watches it, but she was really supportive. I mean, I wasn't racing when she met me,
Right.
and we were high school,
Oh, wow.
grew up in high school together and got married, and we started having kids, and then that's when I started racing, and so it's crazy, and I feel like that I've missed out on a lot of my kids' stuff, and there's things I want to do. So I have I'm not necessarily going to retire. There's some other things I want to do, but I've also, when I was retired for a while, and I came back and came to work for Chip, and I told him I would help him for 2 years. I'm going to finish up my 5th year here, and so I've got to put a stake in the ground and decide. But I also like building things,
Right.
And I feel like that we've got an organization right now that's really, really starting to gel. We made both cars in the Chase, probably the best year that Chip's had in NASCAR, and that's not me. That's all the guys, And if I felt like it was really ready to take off and fly by itself, I would probably. But I had a rude awakening there, getting sick this year, and how fast, and I lost my mother this year, and I lost a couple of really close friends, and so you start to realize that what are you doing here, and I've accomplished everything that I've ever wanted to accomplish. There's only one thing I never got to do, and I always wanted to drive the Indy 500, and that was like.
Something could happen.
Yeah.
A guy with cars.
I do,
Yeah.
but I really, that was the race, that my dad used to take me to the closed circuit TVs in LA and watch the Indy 500, at the theater, and man, I always wanted to race there, but I still think that's one of the best races in the world, so. But I don't really have an answer to that. I'm getting close to figuring that out, but I don't have that yet.
Fair enough. So tomorrow we are going to have lunch with David Hobbs.
Oh, God.
Yeah. We're pretty excited about that.
Oh, man. The greatest.
Yeah.
The greatest.
If you could ask David Hobbs any one question, what would it be?
Doesn't have to be racing.
What a great guy.
That's not a question.
I know. I'm trying to think. I remember one night at Seepkins with David Hobbs.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Here we
this
go.
is always a good start to a story.
I think a lot of people have that story.
One night in Seepkins is always going to end.
Yeah.
well.
I didn't meet him at Seepkins, but I met him like 2 blocks down at the Paddock Club.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a restaurant just down, like literally just down the street.
See, I don't think
Yeah.
I've been up there since like 90.
Oh, you gotta go.
I
To
know.
Elkhart?
Everybody tells me like
Yeah.
95,
It's-
96.
It's like the place is getting better.
Is
know,
it
like
really?
it's almost like one of the, because as you know, like because you've been going to these tracks for so long, a lot of the towns are getting smaller or like going away, or the tracks are going away. It's like Road America, Elkhart Lake is like
never
embracing.
changed, yeah.
It's like it's embracing its tradition and history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like more racers are moving there, getting their like lake house on Elkhart Lake. So
Yeah.
it's like they're really, the town's behind the event for any weekend.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I love
That
going
is a
there.
great. I mean, coming from California, where Riverside and Willow Springs, and
Right.
places they didn't have a blade of grass, you know.
Sure,
and then
yeah.
you go to Road America, Watkins
Beautiful.
Glen, Middle
Yeah,
Ohio, you're like,
absolutely.
holy, I just
They actually have food there.
food, and yeah, they do. David Hobbs' question, man, you guys are making it tough on me. I knew this was going to be a difficult morning. David Hobbs, just a great.
Please
hard-hitting
please
question.
don't go into the office and fire someone because
No,
of
no,
this.
Because of us.
no.
'Cause we think Ed Carpenter's going to.
I saw David last year, Tommy's induction into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he was the MC there, and he called me out. You know, I don't know what it was. It was kind of funny, and everybody's like looking at me, but it was something about maybe Seepkins or something. But I don't know. He was one of those guys that I always wanted to hang out more with. But yeah, that's the thing. He kind of hung up the racing. You know, what helped him make his decision, you know, to
step out.
to step out, and you know, because I'm not gonna just go sit on a rocking chair in a porch someplace. I have some other things going on in the world. That,
Right.
you know, a guy like myself or David, you always got to be busy. I think racers,
Absolutely.
you know, you just can't park yourself.
Right.
You got to keep doing stuff, and but you know, I saw a thing the other day that the racing thing is really a really hard grind.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point you gotta, you know, maybe throttle back just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit. you
Yeah.
know, but
Cool.
yeah.
That's a good enough. That's
Yeah.
a good question.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do if you slow down?
Well, I mean, I'm doing some real estate development stuff, and you know, I have a home in Phoenix that I want to live out there.
Oh, really?
You know,
Okay.
I love hiking and skiing and
Sure.
and mountain biking and doing all that stuff. And the sport has really not afforded me to do a lot. I mean, I've done you know, I go ski
Yeah.
4 days, you know, a year. I want to
Yeah.
ski 25 or 40
Sure,
days,
yeah,
you
totally.
know.
I completely
I have a
get
friend that retired the same time I did,
Right.
and he's skiing like 100 days a year. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
He lives in Vail. I mean, I retired for a year and a half. I got burned out really bad, and
Yeah.
I mean, went to 9 countries and
Oh,
16
wow. So you did
states.
it
We did
right.
a road trip
Yeah.
across the United
Yeah.
States. I skied a bunch that year. You know, I learned how to play polo. You know,
cool.
down in Argentina.
That's
and,
cool.
I mean, I just did a bunch of cool stuff that you never get to do. You know, and
Yeah.
and so my bucket list is really pretty big. I love all the guys I work. If it wasn't for the guys, I would have left a long time
I think
ago.
it's one of the undefined things that, like, as you spend, once the novelty of being at the track and the novelty of going to all the tracks goes away, the camaraderie side is the thing that keeps you in it for, I think, too long.
You know, I don't want to let anybody down, but then, you know, some people that have helped me over the years saying you don't owe them anything either. You
Yeah.
know, you've helped them, and you
Right.
got to think about yourself. So
Yeah.
I wonder why Landon asked that, but it's a lot of people are wondering that, you know. But I'm that guy that's wide open going all the time, or I can't. There's no way to do it halfway. I'd love
Yeah.
to be able to, like,
Yeah.
not go to the races, just work in the office,
Yeah.
or, you know, take a month off here and there.
you can't,
you
yeah.
can't. You know.
Well, the NASCAR schedule, pretty much, their season ends, you're already back to the 500, you know.
You know, it's a really difficult business. Most businesses, you could end up being a consultant, you know, and make your hours. When there's an issue
Yeah.
and a problem, you go in
Yeah.
and troubleshoot that and fix
Sure.
it and make it sure it's right. Then you could go take some time off and do some of your, you know, things that you want to do. But this business, it's one of these troubleshooting things every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't been at the office. I should have been there 2.5 hours ago. I guarantee you they're lined up waiting for me. You know, my phone's been buzzing. It's just there's always some things going on. You
Yeah.
know, even when I spent some time in Phoenix, I spend half the day on the phone.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're either in or you're fully detached. There is no in between.
That's the good and the bad of
Yeah.
motorsports. You know?
Are you familiar with Johnny O'Connell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any-
Great guy.
Any stories about Johnny we should know?
Johnny O'Connell. I got one for Calvin. If you
Sure, yeah,
Are
yeah.
you gonna? You already did Calvin? or-
Yeah, but we'll
Oh.
see him again.
You asked Calvin about one time. I think we were in I think we were in Arizona. And for some reason, I thought we were at Bondurant, but I don't. Maybe we were at Bondurant before we raced at Phoenix with Formula One. I don't remember why we were there, but he got up and he sleepwalked.
Oh, he told that story.
Yeah, yeah.
And he went to the front desk. He didn't have no clothes on.
Naked.
Yeah.
Naked.
Yes, it's
I remember
true.
him waking up and
It's true.
We're having breakfast the next morning. He goes, "You won't believe what." I'm like, "What?" And I've never forgot that. I'm like, "What the hell would you do?"
That's amazing. He told us that story.
Yeah.
That is amazing
I'm
that
pretty
came
sure
back.
it was in Phoenix, but I don't remember.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny O'Connell. I got a Johnny O'Connell story. I was in the BVI sailing, and I'm at this place called Foxy's, which is like this bar on the beach, and everybody's drunk. And I like going to a place like that because there's nobody that knows who you are.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
You can let your hair down even though I don't have any hair. And you're not worried that somebody's going to take a picture of it. Or
Yeah.
And this guy is talking to me, and I hate when people ask me what I do.
Yeah,
You know?
I
And
get
so
that.
this is my standard line in a place like that. I'm a cat herder. And they go, "What are you doing?" I herd cats. And that usually like, okay, this guy's an asshole. You know, so. But the guy, and then the people I was with, they said, "Oh, no, he manages a race team." And then this guy's like, "My neighbor is Johnny O'Connell." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So he's a great guy. But Johnny, I remember when he was an instructor at Bondurant. Yeah.
Was he a second faster than all the other instructors?
I don't know about that. I think, what's the guy, Bill Cooper would probably want to try to take that.
All right.
I don't know. He was pretty good, and he's had a great career too.
Yes.
I mean, there's guys like that we all started out in California. I was never an instructor. I wasn't that good, but I mean, it was like we all started out doing this thing, and you end up making a whole career out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, I was like, wanting to be a race car driver, and next thing I know, I've ended up having a 40-year career of motorsports, and a really successful
With
one.
great programs.
Yeah.
Great
exactly.
programs. I mean,
yeah.
I've only worked for a couple of people. I worked for myself.
Yeah.
I worked for Jack.
Right.
I worked for Eddie Cheever, and I worked for Ganassi. I mean, that's all I've really ever worked
Yeah.
for.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
So the reason we ask is because Johnny's a well-known race car driver, but for some reason, no one seems to want to tell the story about how he tried to murder Dario Franchitti in Detroit a couple years ago.
I did not know this story either. Do I have to wait for the podcast to
Yes,
Yeah.
you
to
do.
hear this story?
Yes, you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you guys have got a fan now. I mean, this is pretty cool. I've really enjoyed this. This has been fun.
I'm sure you got to get going, but you started your career in the glory days of 1,000 horsepower GTP cars and all that sort of thing, and to where we're at today, where do you think the sport is today, and where do you see it going?
I'm telling you, I've struggled with that too. I mean, because I feel like I'm this old guy that thinks that cars should be really. I think about why I wanted to get into racing, because I mean, I was hanging on the fence, and these guys were daredevils hauling ass, and you're like, holy shit, I can do that, and the mechanical part of it was intriguing to me, and I feel like now it's like, I don't know, sports car racing still, and Indy car racing, but the NASCAR thing, it's like we drive around,
Yeah. In
I
a
think
very narrow box of what
narrow
you can do.
box, what you can do. Everybody, if you're not that good today, you point the guy by. I would never have pointed somebody by.
Right.
I might have wrecked before I pointed somebody by. So it's just like, I don't know, but I see it. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
It's entertainment. I'd love to see something like. That's why I think the sports car, and the factories and where it's going. Like if you look at, electric cars and hybrids and Toyota, Audi, those cars they got out there. Look at the Ford GT, that program. I mean that's really cool stuff to me. And but I think there's still the thing that worries me a little bit is kids aren't into cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's a big source of discussion.
That's to me, growing up in Southern California, I was at the front door waiting for the DMV to open up so I could get my license.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was 15 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could ride my motorcycle because you could ride a motorcycle then.
Yeah.
Right.
And then when you were 16, you could drive a car,
Yeah.
And I was at the door when I was 16,
Right.
Right.
And my dad would buy me cars when I was like 12. We
Right.
started buying cars that were blown up, and I would rebuild the engines and fix
That's
them
part
up.
of
We'd
the fun.
sell them.
Right. Does it bug you that you guys are spending, the amount of money on R&D that you are, in such a narrow box? In other words, you're pouring hours and hours and hours of labor and design into, a 32nd of an inch because that's the only kind of tolerance you're allowed to play with.
Yeah, but you have to because everybody's playing that. And if you
Right.
don't take that 10,000th of an inch,
Right.
you're at a disadvantage.
Sure.
So it's we had to refocus how we build cars and how
Right.
we what's important.
Right.
You know,
Would you be more having that budget? Would you be more excited if the box was a little bit more open and all of a sudden you could let's try this aero concept or let's try this geometry?
I think that the fans would be good race. They've struggled with trying to make better racing, and I think that we're all running the exact same car, and so it's hard. Where there was a time when Pontiac had an advantage. Then they cut the spoiler off of it next week, and then they didn't have an advantage. And kind of now we're all, there's always people saying, "Oh, we should just have it like the IROC series, build a bunch of cars, pass them out, and go race them." It's not far from that, but we still got some room. I mean, there's still, I think there's still the guys that really race are up at the front, and the guys, I don't care what you do. That's always been kind of in every formula, but it's just different, And for an old guy like me, you want it to be back like it really was, but for the young guys, it's what they're growing up with, So it's the new norm.
What do you want the legacy of Max Jones to be when the time comes?
I don't know. It's I was really blessed, to get to do what there's not very many people. It's like the kid that has the glove and hangs out at the park, wants to be a baseball player, and then ends up getting to the World Series. And that's I've done it.
Totally.
I really have. I mean, to win as many championships and there's things that I want to do and I never get around to it. And you guys have kind of sparked my interest. Is like all the drivers that I've worked with and driven with. I mean, there's a ton. You look at Mark Martin, all the Roush guys over the years, and the IndyCar guys and the sports car guys that I worked with, and then all the races and championships. I remember my son one time at Charlotte. He was here. I think he was out of college or maybe he was home for the weekend, and we were at Charlotte. At Roush we had 14 teams, trucks, and 6 Busch teams, and I remember Carl winning at Charlotte. The other 4 cars had lost motors that day, and so I went to Victory Circle, shook Carl's hand, and left. And my son was a big deal to go to Victory Circle. Hey, I won the race.
Yeah,
He's all
totally.
excited. And so I left and went to the garage. He's like, "Dad, you don't even enjoy winning anymore. You're just like," I was like, "Dan, there was 4 engines that blew up.
Shop.
Yeah.
And those engines, whatever's wrong with those, they're already in the cars for next week.
Yeah.
I got to figure out, he just, and then I realized you don't even enjoy winning. It's like we'd won a truck race, a Busch race, and a Cup race all in the same weekend.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, we did it a bunch of times.
Right.
And it's just like, hey, fist bump everybody in the Victory Circle and back to work.
And moving on.
So back in the road race days, and when I first started out, man, you won a race that stuck with you for a long time. It was a big deal,
You also usually had a couple weeks in between.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it. So.
My wife always asked, "Why did we leave IndyCar racing when 15 races and 2 or 3 weeks in between?" But I've had a great career. I worked for great guys.
Yeah.
I worked around some great people. Still do. You think about it, Ganassi, what he's got going on. I every once in a while I have to think about it. I work for a guy. You got Michael, the IndyCar team, and Dario and Dixon and Tony Kanaan and those guys. And then you look at Joey Han and Briscoe and all those guys on the sports car team, and what they've been able to accomplish this year in the sports car program. And, I was fortunate, even though we didn't have the success we wanted to have with Montoya, and Jamie McMurray, and now with Larson. I mean, that's awesome.
How do you think Larson's going to stack among the greats as time goes on?
I think if he buckles down and really works hard at it, I think he could be the greatest ever. Right now he's got so much talent, but sometimes you gotta dig hard. This thing's so competitive. You look at Jimmy and the guys that are winning all the time. They're out there doing Ironmans, and they're focused on what. This is a tough deal. It's so competitive. But he's an unbelievable racer. He's young. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. But we all were young at one point. And I look back on my career and say, oh, I could have done this different. You can do that all the time. So But no, he's a talent, and he's a lot of fun to be around. I could go on for days and days. But
Yeah,
you guys,
well, we'd love to do it, but I think you're going to
Yeah.
the queue at your shop is probably going to only get longer.
we're going to be the problem.
yeah, I won't even tell him where I was. So.
Do you worry the place is going to crumble the second you leave?
No, not at all. There's great. It was going before I got there. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not a linchpin or anything.
Sure,
you know.
sure.
You know. You have this. I don't
I
look
have the
at my.
impression even if that was true, you would never admit it.
What's that? If it was.
If it was all like if you were the linchpin, you'd never sit there and say, "Yeah, no, it's all me."
No, it's not. It's not all me. It's
Right.
it's about. I mean, it's not one person.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the quarterback. The quarterback's got to have a line that'll block for him.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's got to have receivers that can catch the ball and not drop the ball.
Right.
You know, and run the patterns. And so it's not. You know, have I added a lot to the organization? I'd like to think I have.
Right.
You know. For every dollar he pays me, I hope I gave him $1.50 back.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd hope, and I hope that I've taught people within the organization. That's a big deal with me because there were so many people in my career that helped me
Right.
that I'm trying to give back. You know,
Yeah,
and that's part of the reason I've been sticking around too, because there's some young guys that really want to make a career out of this, and they, they're not just doing it for a job. So I want to mentor them along And that's a role that I would like to do, that consulting thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I just want to I don't want to get out of racing. I love it. That's the only thing I've ever done in my whole life. Work on cars and race cars. That's all I've ever really done. Now I manage people, but
Right.
I like to stay in it somehow. It's just, and help people, go along,
Well, if you want to stay in it and you want to travel more, we have a Honda Odyssey that needs a driver as we tour the country for season 3.
Yeah.
Can we stop and ski, and can we stop?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Now we're talking. I might have.
We were in Aspen, which seems like 2 years ago. It
Yeah.
was actually like a week ago.
Yeah, literally
with
like 10 days ago.
Janet Guthrie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we had lunch with her. We could just stay in Aspen.
Yeah.
We could make the guests come to us.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
That's fine.
Now I could adjust to that.
Yeah. He's like, I'm in, guys. I'm in.
Yeah, I like hiking and skiing. Those are my two favorite things to do. So Aspen, Vail.
How do you feel about 19-hour drives?
I didn't used to. I used to be able to do it. Like I've done cross country by myself, cross country a lot of times, with another guy or whatever, pulling a trailer. But anymore,
So Fort Lauderdale to Fort Worth within a day doesn't seem like your bag.
Fort Lauderdale to Fort Worth. That I could probably pull that one off. Coffee.
Right.
I get antsy. But if I was listening to podcasts now, maybe that would help the
Oh,
time.
we never listen to it. As
Oh,
we're
you don't?
driving. Yeah, we try to forget about it as soon as we can.
Yeah. But I struggle. I'm not a very good passenger either. My wife's a great driver, but I'm not a good passenger.
Right.
So I end up driving, getting tired. And my wife and I, when I was retired there and I was done, and we were road tripping across the country, and I'm like, we'd never been to Santa Fe, I took the
here we
exit,
go.
went to Santa Fe. I mean, it's just like so much fun that way, I've flown over it a million times, but, let's go there and check it out, She called her girlfriend that used to go there all the time, what hotel we want to stay at, what restaurants we want to go. We had a great time,
Nice.
Have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah.
On this trip, we've had a tiny little bit more free time than last year. Last year, it was like, just get there, and we'd run in late. And, this year, we've kind of, we need to go from New York to Charlotte. Let's drive through D.C. We have to stop for the night anyway.
Yeah.
I've never really seen the sights in D.C.
Yeah.
So on was that Sunday?
Sunday.
Yeah, we took Flat Bill to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln
yeah.
Memorial and the White House, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
It was like a 2-hour little quick
Yeah.
adventure, but it was
But we'll remember those 2 hours better than our 19 hours.
drive from Fort
to
Lauderdale to
Fort
Fort Worth.
Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have stopped by Summit Point, not very far from there. You ever race there?
I've never raced there, but I've done testing there.
Yeah,
The
I
Summit-
raced there. That's a Jack Baldwin story. We were racing IMSA race there, and Jack Baldwin, let me think, you go up the front straight area, turn 1, 2, and there's a left-hander there. And this is another thing that it's amazing is the lack of safety back in those days,
Yeah.
right? So he went off the track. He got into a Porsche, he was passing the guy clipped him. He went off the track, hit the dirt bank, turned over, and went into the woods, right? So all these little poplar trees folded down, slid in, the poplar trees came back up. So the corner worker says he's off in the woods. We were under the yellow. I'm looking. They're saying Jack went off in the woods. They can't find the car because you know,
Holy
the
crap.
trees popped back
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
And he
so
was
he's
in
hidden
there.
in
Then
there.
pretty soon there's some smoke and fire. You know,
Yeah.
Jack had crawled out. He had mud all packed in him and everything. You know, but it was like, but you know, I remember racing at Mossport. You go over the hill, down,
Yeah,
turn two.
through two.
Yeah.
There was people standing on like a chicken wire fence there. If you
Right.
get off, you're gonna run right through 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
good
mean,
old
it-
days.
Yeah, I don't know if they were good or not. 'Cause I always look at that now. If you blasted through there, lost a tire or something, you wiped
Yeah.
out 50 people.
Oh, God.
In '88, Tommy and I got in the Chevrolet, and we were going to race there. And so we went there, and he gave us 2 Corvettes. He drove us out there, out in the middle of nowhere back then. Unlocked the gate. Here's 2 Corvettes, and he locked the gate, and we were in there. And he said, I'll be back this afternoon. And it starts raining. So Kendall and I are in 2 Corvettes. There's no ambulance. Nobody even knows we're there.
Right.
And we blasted around all day long in these 2 Corvettes in the rain. And we learned the track. It was so cool.
Yeah.
We were like sliding around.
That would never.
Yeah, there's no
Ever
way that would
happened
fly today.
today.
Yeah.
I got a Paul Newman story guys will love. I have a picture of in '95 when we ran him at the 24-hour and one with Tommy
Yes.
and Mark
Yeah.
and he
Nobody's
signed
full
that.
Mustang?
Yeah,
Yeah.
He signed that for me, and
That's
I had it in my office at Roush in Michigan for a long time, and now
Yeah.
I still have it. It's a cool picture. But so that year we're going to do this. This is how cool this guy is. I'm telling you, the coolest guy in the world. And so he wants to do this 24-hour race, and so Newman is like, okay, we're going to do this thing. We don't have a car. It's like December. We're thrashing in the shop trying to get this deal done. And the guy, the president at Roush, he's like, hey, you know, Paul said he was going to send a check, and he hasn't sent a check. And, you know, I think it's kind of odd. And I said, you know, I think it's kind of odd, too. I haven't heard from him in a while. So I call him. I said, I'll call him. So we hang up, and it's like 8 o'clock at night. I'm still at the office. I call Paul. Hey, how's it going? I go, yeah, I haven't heard from you. You know, we could use a seat fitting. Want you to come by? You know, I don't know. You know, let me give you a call in a day or two or something. So I hang up the phone. And I call Evan. I go, this ain't gonna happen, man. This guy is
Yeah,
like,
all the signs are there.
it's not happening. You know. So okay, well, tomorrow morning we'll make some phone calls and try to, you know, I'm building a car right now. We're like spending money like
We're doing
drunk
this.
sailors right now. You know. So about half hour later, Paul calls me back. Hey, he goes, hey, Joanne was sitting on my lap, and she doesn't know I'm doing the race yet. So I'll be there tomorrow. Oh, God. I'm like, oh, my God. Coolest guy in the world, man.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely was.
Still not in charge. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
At 70 years old.
Yeah.
He hadn't balled
that's-
up enough to tell us,
Right.
right, I'm going to go race in 24 hours. And we won.
Cool.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm rambling. So.
Nah, it's
No,
all good.
Thanks for the time. That's
Yeah,
huge.
thank you. This was I didn't know what to expect, and I'll be honest with you, I was like, man, what am I doing? I probably shouldn't be doing this. And somehow Sherry and Amy got this thing going, and I'm like, okay. And then yesterday, I'm like, I don't have time for this, but I'm really glad I came. You know,
So you still did it.
I wouldn't blow
Okay,
you
good.
off. I mean, but I'm glad. I'm a big fan now. I'll watch or listen to them, and you guys need to get a TV show.
That's
Well,
tell Sherry.
when we go for the first round of funding, we'll be
Yeah.
sure to call Ganassi and see.
Well, no, it's not Ganassi. It's like we got to find somebody for you. You know?
we're
I
all
like
in.
this. Yeah,
We're all
we'll
in.
give you a commission.
But
Yeah,
in the
no,
Co-host.
in the
Yeah.
meantime, Continental's got the check. If we could get you to say your one word on video for the intro video, it'd just basically be like a bunch of different racers going, you know, reflective. Or what was Landon's word? Oh, never again.
Yeah, never again.
Yeah, never again. Tommy Kendall's word was free because we pick up the tab.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So.
Free meal. That is Tommy Kendall.
Yeah.
I got a story about that too.
Yes,
Kendall.
you do.
He a great friend of mine and his, and president. Now he's an owner of Roush Industries. We went to Key West fishing. So Kendall, he had the arms like this. You know?
T-Rex
the
arms.
T-Rex arms,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my buddy Andy, he finds his credit card. Kendall loses it somehow, so he picks it up. So we go fishing that day. We bring the fish to the restaurant. They cook it. We go to before we go to the dinner, we go into the store, and Andy's like, I think we all have shirts to,
You gotta look good.
look good for the, so we bought shirts and hats, and we go to dinner, and it's like let's start off with champagne. Then we have the great bottle of wine, the fish, dessert, and Kendall's going, man. And so then the bill comes. Signs the bill, and he gives Kendall the receipt. Kendall, and here's your credit card you lost today. It's like, oh, man, he was like out of his mind. Tommy Kendall, man, great guy, great kid. There's a guy that's done a lot.
Yeah. He was a hero of mine growing up.
I was his best man. Both my kids were in his wedding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He's been his dad, him, his whole family. It was so much fun to go to that because the whole family was there. And
Yeah.
his mom, and great guy.
Yeah, we have a Tommy Kendall story, and I think you would like it and appreciate us telling you. He agreed to be on the show. Sean's worked with him in the past on different projects, and I've raced against him a few times. Like, he did some historic stuff a few years ago.
Yep.
And so he agrees to be on season 1, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to. Sounds good. I'm going to be in New Smyrna Beach on
He's
this
got a
date.
place down
And
there.
we're like, great. We're going to be coming through Florida. We're going to go get the Wayne Taylor kids. It'll be this one trip. And he's like, awesome, I'll be there. So at the last second, he gets something that keeps him in L.A. for business or whatever. So he can't make it to New Smyrna Beach when he thought he could. And so he takes a flight from L.A. to New Smyrna Beach, shows up. He drives up to the restaurant we're at. He's in like a crappy Nissan Altima rental car. And I was like, no, you should be driving like a Jeep or something cool. You're Tommy Kendall, you know. You have the chicken car. So I'm like, is that a rental? And he said, yeah. We're like, oh, okay. So then we thought, well, maybe just he's here for a couple of days or something. We finished the episode. He turns to us. He's like, hey, can I borrow an iPhone charger? I left mine at home. And we're like, yeah, sure. So Sean's kind of dealing with him. I say goodbye, and I go load the van, and we go to leave. And Sean walks up, and he's got this perplexed look on his face. And I was like, what's up? He's like, Tommy couldn't be here when he thought he could. So he scheduled a flight, flew himself from L.A. to New Smyrna Beach, had lunch with us, went back to the airport, flew back to L.A. on his dime.
Yeah.
Because he committed to us and said he was going to be there.
Yeah.
And we could not believe it.
Yeah.
And didn't call any attention. Like, we only knew because he lost his charger. He
Yeah.
would have otherwise never told us that he did it.
Yeah. And we
So.
just couldn't believe how stand-up of a guy that is for
He
our
is.
unheard of podcast at the time, and still not doesn't matter. You know what I mean? This is purely for fun. But he went out of his way to do that for us, and it was like we had other guests, not to be named, that couldn't give us a half an hour, and they are nowhere near a legendary status of any sort.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this guy can't figure out how to schedule a dinner. This guy flew from California for us. That blew our minds.
No,
Like
you look at Tommy and where he started, because I mean I knew him before he started racing, and where he is today and what he's gone through, and he's an awesome guy, awesome guy.
I'm finished.
wow, that was such a great episode. That guest really knew how to tell a story.
Well, good, Ryan. I'm glad that you enjoyed that Max Jones on your podcast.
You're welcome, Sean. I'm right here.
All right, thank you to Max Jones for giving us his time. This is not his kind of thing, as he said several times, and yet he still sat down with us for a solid couple hours and just was super cool about it. Speaking of Ryan and his podcast, if you listen to the Marshall Pruitt podcast, he gave Ryan an opportunity that we haven't done on this podcast, which is giving him a chance to just talk about himself for an hour. But in that, he talks about a band that he spends a lot of time with back in 2006. That is none other than Richard Sherfey and All God's Children. Cool group out of sort of his neck of the woods. Here's a song of theirs to lead us out called Caroline.